Welcome to r/Tales from Security, where we share stories of physical security, loss prevention, protective services, and anyone in general who gets paid to watch people, etc. And the first story is more action off duty. First time post here on mobile, so be gentle. Only ever listened to stories on YouTube and thought I'd share a few experiences I've had over the years. Background: I used to be a doorman in the UK and was stationed at local village pub for about 2 years. Upon taking over security of the venue, it took me and my friend about a month to get the undesirables out and make it a venue for local people to come in and enjoy their nights out. Now, as with small venues, there was only ever 2 of us allocated, usually a Friday and Saturday night. I have various stories about my time as a doorman, but I thought I'd start with this one. At the end of a Saturday night shift, I had closed up the door and was outside waiting for karaoke crew and bar staff to clean down and pack up. I had already let the other doorman leave, as we had shut up shop. Having a cigarette, I notice a man and a woman is walking up the street on the other side of the road. I noticed them as there seemed to be raised voices, and the man was insisting that the woman was to come back to his place, but the woman was having none of it. She repeatedly kept telling the man, "No, I'm going home by myself. You should do the same." This carried on for a couple of minutes, while still walking up the street, whilst getting closer to me, and at this point I could clearly hear the conversation go down the hill. Now, for those of you who have never worked in security will appreciate, I have an unwritten rule, which is passed on to me. When there are 2 men fighting, get involved. When there are 2 women fighting, get involved. When a man and a woman are fighting where possible, keep out of it. There are too many incidents where couples argue and fight, and either doormen or security guards intervene, only to then be set upon by both parties. I make the decision to try and talk some reason into the man, shouting across the street to get his attention and distract him away from the woman. "Me, why don't you listen to what she's got to say, and leave it to it. She's already said she will meet up with you tomorrow." He's having none of this, gesturing to me to go away and turning his attention back to the woman. It's at this point he starts to become physical with her. He grabbed her by the arm and throat and pins her against the shutter of a closed supermarket. At this point my instincts take hold of me and I start running directly towards the incident. This is probably a good time to point out that 6 feet 4 inches tall, weighing 19 stone, and I'm a former semi-professional rugby player with a varied martial arts background. I get about 5 feet from the man when he begins to turn to look at me, probably from the sound of police-issue boots I was wearing. He realized I was coming towards him, but as he was in a drunken stupor, turned and looked before he could react I was upon him. I vividly remember the look of shock on his face and the eyes like a rabbit in the headlights as I dropped my shoulder directly into his chest, clattering him into the shutters, and subsequently removed his grip off the woman. He then proceeds to grab me and try to struggle, but in one motion I perform a hip toss on him, which left him back down on the floor, where I was then able to pin him down, arms across his chest. Funny side note to this, I didn't realize it at the time because I reacted so quickly, but I did all this still with half-smoked cigarette in my mouth. It was only when I had the man pinned on the floor that it became apparent that I was actually still smoking. Haha. Staff from the venue had now witnessed what happened and had to come assist me. One of them calls out, "What can I do? You need me to do anything? You need help?" Me, "Yes, get over it and get the cigarette out of my mouth. I can't see due to the smoke." Huh. I call out another member of staff to ring the police to deal with the situation. Now, this is probably one of the best police response times I've ever had in the 6 years I was a doorman. No longer than 3 minutes passed, and a police officer pulls up in his car, right next to the pavement, where I'm pinning the man down. The police officer casually gets out of the vehicle, walks nonchalantly to us, looks down at the man still being pinned by myself, and have just the words, "Who's been a silly little boy then?" At this point, all I can remember going to my head with this police officer is an absolute legend. Police officer looks at the man and tells him he's going to be let go and brought to his feet, and he's going to be assisted by himself. And in doing so, as to his feet, the words, "You are now going to feel a very cold starts at metallic sensation on your wrists." That is me placing handcuffs on. Once again, I'm loving this police officer. I only wish the UK had more like him. How I didn't stop laughing, I have no idea. The man is now up, he is handcuffed, another police officer has turned up with a van to take him away, and he is currently handling original police officer for myself. I go through in detail about the events above. The lady in question corroborates what I said, and also the witnesses around from the venue. At this point, the man has the realization that he's not going home this evening, and he's going to be spending the night in the cells, and starts kicking up a fuss with the other police officer, refusing point blank to get in the back of the van, and positioning himself in such a way that you would not be able to move. The original police officer has now gone over to deal with this gentleman. He starts by asking him once again to get in the van, which is properly refused. He looks at me and suddenly the man is in the back of the van. It was like voodoo magic. Apparently, as the police officer had moved back, he slipped, which resulted in his knee connecting with the man's backside, which you promptly ended up face first on a van floor. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I'm hoping the next part will show you the stark realization of what we were dealing with. When the man was in the back of the van, handcuffed, he proceeded to lash out, kick, smash, and headbutt anything around him, mostly injuring himself in the process. But if he hadn't been so swiftly moved into the back of the van, the consequences for those around at the time could have been costly. I was thanked by the police officer for my swift actions, and they took them away, and then went on to speak with a woman to ensure she was okay, and if you need any assistance, as I was about to leave the venue, and I could offer a lift home. She declined this, as she only lived a straight up from the venue, and was happy at walk. I later found out after a search of the man he had a large sum of money in his possession, which then warranted a search of his premise, where they found various stolen items, more large sums of cash and drugs. I received notice from the courts that the man was going to be charged for a number of things, and I was requested to appear as a witness. I was soon after informed that he pleaded guilty on all charges, and that he received a heavy fine, and a large amount of community service. No need to attend it as a witness. Whoop whoop. Just to head off any comments after this post, no, I am not a bully boy. I did not become a doorman to enforce my will on others. In fact, I am often described as a protector. I took my job very seriously. I would never look to or instigate any incidents, but I was more than happy and comfortable in dealing with them and getting a safe and quick resolution. To back what I'm saying, I'm looking to post another story shortly, where I will go through taking down a bully boy doorman. Who does for that stereotype? What he did, how he acted, and how I was able to deal with it. That story should also give those of you some insight on how those bully boys operate and what they try to do to get you to look like the bad guy. Hope you enjoyed reading. See you all soon. The second story is Roid Rage Boss. So this is from years ago, but still under an NDA for a bunch of the facility stuff, so some stuff is going to have to be deliberately vague. Sorry if things seem disjointed or confusing. Feel free to ask questions and I'll answer them if I can. So the facility I worked at years ago, I had been working at for many years, working with a solid crew, having very little turnover, and had two of the best bosses I had ever worked for. Over my time there though, because I had worked there for so long, people did turn over, and in my time there I had worked every shift imaginable, including a few shifts where I didn't leave the facility for a week. This is important to illustrate that I knew the facility and duties very well, and got along with everyone who was there, security and civilian alike, from all points. We find out that our captain is retiring, and our company has sent over a guy, RR equals Roid Rage, to take over the captain position, despite the fact that Roid Rage has only worked for our company for less than 6 months. Anyway, Roid Rage comes on and trains for 2 weeks under the captain, taking a variety of shifts to train on every aspect of our job, which Roid Rage was very nonchalant about. Roid Rage didn't take a liking to me from the beginning, due to small dog syndrome. We were both in our 20s, but I was 6'5", 300 pounds, and Roid Rage was 5'8", maybe 180. Of everyone who worked there, the only sergeants and the captain were more experienced than I was about this facility, and none of them had ever worked graveyard or overnight, sticking to daytime hours then. So when I was trying to teach Roid Rage about the particular wildlife dangers this remote location presented, he just ignored me. New guy finishes his 2 weeks training, and Roid Rage has the power go to his head. Starts lining us up to yell at us about things he doesn't like that we're doing. In particular, he doesn't like that my patrols through the facility, most of what I do is outside. I tried explaining that because this facility was designed to make it impossible for a human to get within a mile of our fence or gate without us seeing them coming, that our main threat came from wildlife, and that the only way to watch for the wildlife was outside the facility. I only did cursory patrols through the main sections of the facilities to visually double-check the cameras and other sensory equipment. He didn't care for my excuse and told me I needed to spend more of my patrol inside the building. Our patrols were supposed to last for an allotted time, and so because I was told to spend my time inside, I started looping inside the building twice before doing my outside patrol. Well, over the coming days, it becomes apparent Roid Rage is spending his day reviewing all the cameras during his shift and not actually patrolling or operating the facility as he is supposed to do, because Roid Rage starts chewing out all the other officers on different things, including me, because I am now walking the facility too fast. Roid Rage comes very close to me and yells full on in my face, doing this at a time where I am dead from spending 16 hours on site. I tell some of the other guards on my next shift I won't put up with the yelling if Roid Rage does it again. Well, the next shift, of course, during my patrol, I'm making my second loop through the facility. When the call comes through our radio, one of the civ engineers has been attacked by a wild animal. I, of course, rush to the engineer and begin first aid, while the other guards start with calling police, animal control, ambulances, facilities manager, captain, and our corporate office. While the condition the engineer was in was severe, he ended up recovering, with no permanent damage, thanks to our quick response. Of course, Roid Rage has to come out to the facility to fill out a report and give a full report to corporate because of the severity of this incident. When Roid Rage gets there, he immediately begins to tear into me as I was filling out my paper report of the incident, telling me I should have been monitoring for stuff like this. I calmly tell him that he had specifically told me to reduce my time outside and spend more time inside. Roid Rage, of course, refuses to accept this and starts going into a tirade in which he decides he's going to crowd me while I was sitting. I stand up because my personal space is being invaded by a guy who is yelling and threatening me at this point. Roid Rage doesn't like me standing up, and he takes his swing and hits me straight across the jaw, to which I instinctively reacted, shattering his arm and collarbone, sending him through the office wall. We ended up having to call the ambulances back the same night to come pick up my boss, and our district manager had to come out to help settle things. Roid Rage ended up getting arrested for assault and was terminated. I was let go for use of excessive force. But to keep me from suing, they offered me 2 years' pay and my full dental vision health for those 2 years. The last story is reserved parking. You cannot park here. I'm working a craft show at a venue that also has a restaurant, and that restaurant has 8 reserved spots for customers. Whenever we work this venue, we have to direct traffic because the full parking lot area isn't painted, due to some regulation, as it's also a cruise ship dock. So one of us is always guarding the reserved spots with their life, telling literally every single person that those spots are reserved. There usually isn't much of an argument, but today, oh my. A guy rolls in, almost hitting me while waving at me, acknowledging that I am in fact standing there. He reluctantly rolled down his window after a few seconds of awkward eye contact. Me, I'm sorry, these spaces are reserved for the restaurant. All other parking is down there through that gate. Him, nah, I'm parking here. Me, if you park here, you will be towed. It's for restaurant customers only. Him, well, I don't see a sign. Me, I'm your sign. You have to move. Him, I'm not moving. I'm not parking all the way down there and walking through this parking lot to get in. It's freezing out. Me, tell me about it. I've been out here for 3 hours so far telling people they can't park here and directing traffic. Him, well, that's your job and that's why you're here. Me, exactly. And since you're able to acknowledge that it's my job to tell you to move, can you please move your car? At this point, I think his brain broke for a minute because he didn't have anything to say. He just turned the car on and moved. On his way back through the doors, though, he muttered "parking Nazi D-head," loud enough for me to hear. This is the first game of mental chess that I've won against one of these Ps, so please, let's all enjoy this together. Before I submit, yes, there are signs stating that this is restaurant parking only, but because it's winter, they're in storage because they blow away, get knocked over by plows, etc. There's nowhere to bolt a sign to. Thank you for listening. Have a good one.